Hello.
Everyone. How's everyone doing?
Doing good.
Sweet.
Okay, now I can talk. Maybe you guys going.
Hey. I believe we have a special guest joining. I don't see them yet though. But yeah, there he is. Hey.
Hola.
Hola. Okay, coders people, turn your camera on for like just like 1 minute so you can introduce yourself, or so this new person here can see you. So we've got a new mentor that wants to start helping you all out. So we added him to the Slack. So you can hit him up there directly. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Hi, my name's Eric Kyle. I'm a full stack dev at Clever currently for my, day job. TypeScript and Rust are kind of my jam, so those are my two go-tos, but I also do a lot of PHP at work, so I'm pretty comfortable in any of those things. If anybody's got questions, JavaScript, obviously. So HTML, CSS, whatever you guys need, here for that. And I've done the whole free code camp slew. I know that you based some of your stuff on that, and I did that years ago, but very familiar with that. Happy to help, and just hit me up anytime, directly or in the channel. So
Thanks, Eric.
yeah.
Does anybody know Clever on the call? Has anybody heard of that company?
Just a little bit. Went to a meetup over there before.
Cool. Yeah. Pretty active in the community dev shop in OKC. So thanks for being here, Eric. Appreciate you volunteering. Okay, so logistics. So I'm gonna be out of town this weekend and next week. So we're gonna do class on Saturday virtually, which I actually was wanting to do this anyways because I for our working days on Saturdays, I think we've been kind of trending more towards just working on our own on stuff. And there's actually a huge benefit to pairing. So pair programming is a very common thing, or maybe it's not super common, but it's a well-known concept in programming, and it's really beneficial, especially for learning. And so I actually really want to basically have that Saturday's working session be where you pair with one other person. So we'll like pair everybody up, and then you can join your own Zoom or Google Meet and work on the exercises we'll have on Saturday together. And there's a specific way to go about doing that, which is called like driver and observer. So I'll explain that concept more on Saturday, but don't plan on coming on Saturday. There will not be anybody there, and just join the class Zoom. We can actually do breakout rooms on Zoom, so that actually might be the easiest thing to do. And we'll kind of split everybody up and work on the exercises, and I'll kind of explain how to do pair programming then. So that's Saturday. And then Wednesday, I'm just gonna pre-record the class and post it. So all you need to do on Wednesday, or all you need to do is watch that video. So you can watch it on Wednesday. But I'll probably post that video this weekend. So you can watch that anytime you want next week. And then everything will go back to normal on Saturday. So we'll be back in person, not this Saturday, but the next one. Cool. Okay, so let's hop into it. All right, so one of the things covered in your homework was debugging. Very important thing. There's like different strategies that you can follow for trying to figure out what's going wrong with your code. So I'm going to talk about a few of those things today. And then coming up for you guys haven't quite done any of these yet, but there's a lot of in the rest of the free code camp material for JavaScript, there's a lot of stuff about algorithms. And so I want to talk about what algorithms are and why you need to kind of get good at doing them. Okay, so debugging. So I want to start the class off with an exercise. So I've got a program here. Is this big enough, by the way, the screen? If nobody says anything, that means it's too small. Okay.
Yeah, that looks good.
All right. So here is a program. And this is a Node program. And it has some of the things we learned about in our first class. So we've got the file system being imported so that we can read a file from our computer. So you can see like there's this sort of main function that was written. You'll see in programs actually people write a function called main, which is meant to be like the entry point into the program, like the first function to run to kick off the program. And so that's what happens here. You can see main being called. Main just has a file that it's referencing. It reads the file, which is this method up here. And then we call this function called count word occurrences. And essentially we're trying to figure out how many times does a particular word show up in the file that we've read. So I'm saying how many times does code show up in the file contents of that file that we read, and then we just console log, that word appears this many times in the file. And this is that fancy string concatenation thing I referenced to before. I just did it that way without even thinking about it. Okay, so this is the program. There's a bug in this program. Okay, so the file is here. So hello coder, don't you love to code is super fun, although learning the code is quite challenging. So let me paste this in Slack. So that's the content of the file. And then the program is this code here. Okay, so we only care about the actual word code. So in this case, we're only interested in it having the word code. So coder doesn't count. So for code though, how many times does code show up in our file? In the contents of this file here. So you can decide what you think the correct answer is for that. But currently, if we run this program, so let me run it real quick. How do I, so I'm, let me move up one. So here's where I am currently on my computer. I'm in OKCoder's curriculum module 3. How do I look at what is in this folder that I'm in?
LS.
Yeah, LS. All right, so the code that we want to run is in the day 3 folder. So how do I move to that folder?
CD space folder name with the /.
Yeah, so folders day 3. I can start typing and then hit what to like have it like sort of autocomplete for me. Tab, and then I just need to type 3. So now I'm in day 3. If I want to see what's in day 3, I can list again with LS. But we've got my script I want to run in this folder. So we're in the right place. And if I want to run that JS file that I have in here, what do I type to do that?
It was it just node
Program, isn't it?
and then the file name?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. So Node is the program we want to run. It's the program we run to do JavaScript stuff. And then if we can pass that a file name to run that file. So that's what we want to do in this context. But you can, by the way, just run Node without any argument, and it will put you into what's called the Node REPL, which is just like the console in the browser. You notice I've got this caret, and like now the screen has changed a little bit. I don't know how well you can see this. And what I can do now is the same thing that we do in the browser. So whenever we go to the browser and we open the console in the browser, notice that we get that little caret here, and it's sort of blinking. This is the JavaScript console that we've opened in the browser, and we can do JavaScript. We can do like 1+1, right? When you just run Node, we just created the equivalent of that. We're now in this what's called a read, evaluate, print loop, meaning it's just like we're in the JavaScript console, and it'll read any JavaScript that we type and then evaluate it and then print the result for us. And so I can do 1+1, and it acts exactly the same way as the way the console does in the browser. So this, if you just need to do some JavaScript without, you don't want to write a whole code file, you just want to do some quick JavaScript, like you can just go to your terminal, type Node, and then start doing whatever JavaScript that you want. So you have to know how to get out of this though. So like to get back to doing stuff in the terminal, you have to hit Control-C twice to get out of there. Okay, so back to running the program. So Node program to debug JS. So now we're saying, hey, I want you to run this file, and then once you've ran that file, then you can be done with what I wanted you to do. So we run the file. It says the word code appears 1 times in the file. So basically, the way that I've described this problem, it should be saying 2 times. Code appears twice in the file. And then we're not going to count coder because that's not strictly the word code. So look at this code. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. You may not figure out what's wrong, but look at this code and try to figure out where the bug is. Okay, so I don't know if anybody figured it out, but if you did, I don't want you to say anything because I want to walk through the process of figuring out what's going wrong. So maybe the bug is simple enough where you can just read the code and quickly see it, but often that's not the case. Often, like the code is pretty complicated and it's hard to spot what's going wrong. And so one of the practices to follow in debugging is basically to figure out the state of the program as it's running through it. And so, when you were looking at this code, I don't know exactly what you were doing, but if I was trying to debug it, I would be trying to kind of predict what each line is resulting in, right? And following through the order of execution for the program. And so there's a few assumptions that I would need to check to make sure it's doing what I expect. So first thing is, well, did it read so basically here is kind of the first starting point of the program, right? So the first thing that maybe could have gone wrong is maybe it didn't read the file correctly. Like maybe I'm not getting back the actual contents of the file in the exact way that I'm expecting. And then let's just start ensuring that what is happening is what we expect. And so a very common thing that you'll see people do is just add console logs all over the place in the program and basically logging whatever it is that they are trying to verify is the value that they expect it to be. So the first thing we would want to do is, okay, well, let's make sure that file content is correct. So we can add a console log to this, and ChatGPT is on, and it's actually doing kind of some helpful stuff here. I'm gonna turn it on. I said I was gonna leave it on all the time at this point for you all to see it. Let's go ahead and accept what it's doing. So first off, it's let me go ahead and teach this special string syntax real quick. So if you use with a string, you can use single quotes or double quotes, right? We've learned that, and they're both basically the same. You can also use the backtick. The backtick is below your escape key. And it's another way to make a string, essentially, but it's a special type of string that allows for this syntax in blue that you see here, which is this $bracket syntax. And essentially what that's doing is if you do the $bracket syntax, you can then essentially put variable names inside the brackets, and it will find that variable and replace it with the content of that variable. You can also just do any sort of JavaScript you want. So you could do like 1 + 1 inside there, and it would evaluate it to 2 and then stick 2 in there. And so this is a little bit cleaner, and you can do it more than once, right? So we did it here for the file name, and then we did it here for the file content. So if we were doing this in our old way, we'd have like the string, the file with the space in it, plus file name, plus the string has this content : space, plus file content. And like when you have to do more than one variable, it kind of gets nasty with how many pluses you have to do. So this is just like a little bit cleaner syntax to inject variables into the strings that we're trying to create. So that's what's happening here. Okay, so when we log to the console, we may have like various logs that we're going to do in one swoop. So there may end up being like a ton of logs showing up in the console whenever we run our program. And so usually when you're logging something, you want to have like a descriptive log of what it is that you're logging. And so ChatGPT was trying to do that for me. And so I'm trying to verify that we're getting the right file content. And so this is pretty helpful. So it's the file name has this content, file content, pretty helpful. So we'll be able to see what the file content is when we run the program. Okay, next is we call this function count word occurrences. We pass in the file content and then the word that we want to count the occurrences for. So the first thing we could do now is, okay, let's check text and word up here and make sure that that's all happening correctly. So we can do console.log and okay, counting occurrences of the word in the text. I guess that's fine. I mean, we just logged the file content right before that, so we probably don't need to log the file content again. But we could log the text here as well if we wanted to. But let's just leave it at that. The next thing is, okay, what is this doing? So does anybody know what split does? Does anybody look up what that method does?
Returns an array of the objects using space as like a delimiter. So you'll have like every word separated by a space in the array instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so split is a method on a string, and you're basically saying, hey, like split this string wherever you see a space, and then give me back an array of all those new strings. All right, so it'd be really helpful to log the result of that. So let's log. That's not what I want. I just want to log words. So we'll do words is, yeah, thank you. Okay. So I'm just logging, like I'm putting words, like that's the thing I'm logging. So I just like put the text words and then I'm now logging all those words. So I'm going to log that array of strings that we're getting. Okay, great. And then we go into a loop through those words. So like we have an array of strings and we're going to loop through the array of strings. Now here's a for each. What would have been a method that we learned that might have been better than this for each that we could use instead?
Matt?
I'm sorry, I said for each. We're using a for loop. What's the method that's better than a for loop?
I think it might be for each.
Bingo, correct. Okay, so so we'll do words dot for each word, and then we'll just stick this in there instead. And now we don't need that for loop. Notice we've got this count 0 up here, which is going to be our accumulator for however many words that match there are. What was the other method that we saw that is, if you're going to do this style, is better for that? Does anybody remember that method we used to like to sum up the like numbers that we had in the array?
Reduce.
Yeah, reduce. So you could use reduce here as well, but let's just leave it at this for now. Okay, so we log the words and then we loop through the words. And then we've got this if statement here. Oh, we can't do word either. That's not so we need to change this variable to match word. And then we'll do, and then obviously we need to change this to be word equals match word. Okay. And then Oh no, sorry, I'm jacking this up. Okay, yeah, we're good. Okay. Sorry, when I changed it from that for loop to a for each, I had a variable name conflict. Okay, so when we're looping through the words, we then have this if statement that we're running to decide whether or not the word that we're on is the match word that we're looking for. So it can be really helpful here to kind of log what's happening as well. So we can do console log the word, and then we can console log yeah, why not? Word to lowercase. And then we can console log match word to lowercase as well. So we're basically, we have this if statement here, and we want to log each of the components of the if statement. So we want to be able to tell, like, is this returning true or false? And then we can tell whether or not it's being, that thing is being counted or not. Okay. And then if we wanted to, we could console log count down here. Good. Okay, so basically what we've done is we went through the program and we added all of the logs to like every sort of consequential moment in the program that is going to help us understand whether, like, where our bug is being introduced. Now, sometimes people do this all in one swoop, like I just did. Other times someone would just add one log and run the program and see what that log did, and then go and then, like, based off the result of that, go put the log somewhere else and just kind of like add a log, run the program, add a log, run the program. Sometimes it takes a lot of lift to run the program or to like get it into the state you need to be able to get those logs. And so sometimes adding all of them in one swoop and then running it is easier than like that iterative approach. In this particular program, it's really easy to run it. And so I could have just add the log and then ran it. But I went ahead and just added all of them. And the reason I did that is because I wanted you to see why it's helpful to have descriptive logs. Like, so you could just log the thing that you wanted to see, but I'm doing this extra effort of like putting a description of what I'm logging so that it's easier to understand what's happening whenever we run the program. Okay, so let's run the program. And we've got a lot of logs here. So first thing is the file test file.txt has this content. Hello coder.elliptic code. Super fun, although learning to code is quite challenging. So this looks correct. Like that is the same thing as the file that we saw. Okay, and then it says it's counting occurrences of the word code in the text. So code is like the word that we want. So that's being logged correctly. And then we logged all the words in the file after doing that split. This is amazing. Okay. So we did that split right on the space. So, you know, take this and then here's a space, so split it. And so like this would get added to the array and then this would get added to the array and then here's another space and then this would get added. So you can see whenever we log an array in Node, it's like turning it in, it's like putting commas in there for us to show it. Like it has to show it as text, you know? And so that's what's happening here. And so these commas are actually like the comma separator of the elements in the array. And you'll notice something kind of funny looking, like 2 commas in a row like this. So, like,
The
Like,
string is fun,
this is-
comma,
yeah, so that's that, and then this is the separator. Yeah, sorry, it like threw me off for a second too. So that that's what's happening here. I think if we actually just log words by itself, I think it might, I just want to see if it formats it better without it being inside that string. Yeah, okay. So before we had this, like we were doing that string concatenation stuff. So this forces words, the array of strings, to be a string so that it can concatenate it. This is like doing that, like, oh, you want to combine a string with an array? Well, I'm going to turn the array into a string and then combine it with the other string. In this case, if we just log the array directly without doing that, it's actually a little bit more easy to read. So you can see when it's logging an array to the console, it'll like do this nice formatting for you where it'll like color code stuff and then show you the array brackets. So that's a little more helpful to read. And you'll notice like we don't have that kind of funky comma thing throwing us off anymore. So we can see, okay, it took all the spaces out, and then everything around the spaces, it made an element in the array. So, you know, hello coder, don't you love to code? It is super fun, right? So here's all the words in there. Maybe you can spot the issue at this point already, but maybe not. So here are all the words. We've got coder, we've got code with a question mark, we've got code here. And okay, so all right, maybe you see it or maybe you don't. So we'll keep moving through. So the next thing that happens is we loop through all these words. We see hello first. And then in this program, we don't care about the case of the word. Like we don't care if it's capital C code or all caps code. And so that's why we're doing that to lowercase call, is to say, you know, you're looking for the word code. I'm going to just make it all lowercase. And then when I compare it to the words in the sentence, I'm going to lowercase that thing as well. And so to lowercase is a method on all strings that will just lowercase the string for you. Okay. So we get hello and then hello to lowercase, and then our match word is code. And you know, those don't match. Then we see coder, and then our match word is code, and we're doing a strict equals, right? So we're doing, you know, does that exactly equal the match word? So let's kind of skip to when we do, like when we have one that we expect. So we don't expect don't, we don't expect you, we don't expect love, we don't expect to. We do expect code, right? We do want to count this one. The word code is in there. But does code question mark equal code? Any brave souls?
No.
In terms of the way this is
It
reading it,
doesn't.
no, it does not.
Did I say that one more time, Dom?
It does not, because it's counting the question mark as another character that's tacked onto it. It's not
Okay.
exactly code.
Yeah, perfect. So there's our bug. So maybe you spotted that whenever you were just reading through the code, but maybe you didn't. And so like we need a strategy to be able to find these bugs. And so just like diligently going through each step of the program and seeing what's happening through console logging is like the main method to do that. And like that, I do this all the time. Like I'm constantly doing this practice. And so it's definitely something you'll get used to doing. And you'll start figuring out like a guess of where you think the bug might be, and you might like kind of like go straight there. But then often, you know, it's not there, and you kind of have to take a step back and just like go through the whole program. Okay, so that was our strategy for debugging. So now we know where the bug is. Like, oh, punctuation is going to throw it off. So we still want to count the word even if it's at the end of a sentence, right? Essentially is what that is. So we now can delete all of our console logs, because now we know where the issue is. Okay. And now the question is like, how do we fix that bug? What is like the proper way to do this? And this is like a great, actually, let me just check if there's anything I wanted to say else about. Oh yeah, so the last thing to say is, so how do you prevent ever even getting to the point of like writing a whole program and then realizing there's a bug in it? So one good practice is to basically check that your program is doing what you expect as you're writing it. And so this isn't a huge program, but if I was writing it, I would have like checked that things are working as expected throughout. And so the bug ended up being in sort of our logic of how we're matching stuff, but it could have been somewhere else. And so like everywhere I put logs in before is stopping points when you were originally writing this program to make sure everything is working as expected. So I probably would have started off with, reading the file and then getting the file contents and then console logging the file contents to make sure it read the file correctly. So I would have ran the program at that point to see it print the file contents correctly. Then I would have moved on to the next piece, and so on. And so basically, like, instead of writing all this code in one swoop and then running the program, you would write like a function and then check that the function's working correctly, and then move on to the next one and check that that function is working correctly, and then move on to the next one. So like iteratively making sure things are working as expected is important as well. Okay. Any questions at all about debugging or anything? That's all that's all I need to really cover on that topic. Okay. So algorithms. Algorithms are kind of yeah. So yeah, now also you have this new strategy for debugging, which is take all your code and put it in ChatGPT and ask it for where the bug is. Like that's actually totally a new, like a legit new strategy. So someone mentioned that it totally is true. You can ask ChatGPT like, hey, here's my program. I'm expecting it to do this, and it's not, like, where's the bug? And like that honestly is a good way to do it as well. Okay, so let's move to algorithms. So algorithms is this like fancy term that you'll hear, I'm sure you've heard it all the time. And it's a fancy term for like a series of steps or like just logic. Like what is the logic or the strategy or the way that we're going to tackle this problem? And then like, what are the series of steps involved in that particular strategy that we take? And so you can just like describe an algorithm typically in plain text, or like in a sentence. So like convert Celsius to Fahrenheit or convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Well, someone would say, okay, well, to convert Fahrenheit or to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, like multiply it by 9/5 and then add 32 or whatever, I think is correct. So that's just like the text description. But then you often need to code it. And so you'll take like your decision of what the algorithm is and then code it. And then in that case, like it's pretty easy to code that. It's just like simple math within the code. But algorithms are just these like little juicy, like small contained like challenges that you need to write a solution to. And you'll see it you'll just have to do it all the time in programming. Like you're coming upon these like unique challenges that you need a solution to that's not provided out of the box by the language. And so an example of that is this one right here. So, this is a whole program, and like reading the file is not really an algorithm for us. Like we're not, like we just have a program we can run to read the file. And like logging to the console isn't like an algorithm, but the whole like count the number of occurrences of a word is sort of like the algorithm of this program. It's like the little problem that we're trying to solve. It's like the unique thing that we're writing. And like this current solution, this current approach is a buggy algorithm, right? So we need to like update our algorithm to work correctly. And so our current algorithm for counting the word occurrences is, okay, we'll just like loop through each word and then just like split it on the space and then loop through each word that was created after doing that and compare it after lowercasing it to the match word that you want after lowercasing it. That's our current algorithm. And it doesn't quite work. So we need a new one. So this is actually kind of tricky. There's like always like a few different ways that you can approach this problem. But essentially what we want is compare actually let's I really want to turn ChatGPT off so you guys can think on this one. So compare two strings to see if they are equal. Do not worry about casing or punctuation. This is essentially this is like what our product manager would give to us. Like, here's what I need this app to do or this feature to do. They compare the two string. Well, really, they would just say count the word occurrences in the sentence. But like we would get to a point where we realize like, this is a more detailed description of what we need, which is we're going to compare the two strings and see if they're equal, but we don't want to worry about casing or punctuation. So if you take a second to think about how you would do this. So here's the current code for it. How would you update this to somehow ignore punctuation? Like how would you get it to do that? So think about that for a second. And so will I, because I have to decide myself as well. Okay, anybody have any, you don't have to have the answer. Does anybody just like have any thoughts or like what they initially thought of?
You could probably do a regular expression
Yeah, that's what I thought.
within like the word dot to lowercase, and maybe do like a backslash capital W backslash type deal.
Mm-hmm. So we haven't quite learned, we're not gonna learn about regular expressions in this course. But yeah, we could probably do something with a regular expression. And regular expressions are this fancy like text matching system. So that's an option. Any other thoughts? Anybody else have any thoughts?
Could we maybe utilize the replace method to find punctuation and replace it with the space or something that's easier to deal with?
Yeah, I think that's a good option. So we can remove the punctuation basically and then compare after removing it. Any other thoughts?
My initial thought was actually to use a substring, like to just get the 4 left ones, and then if the 5th one was punctuation, I would count it, and if it was a letter, then I wouldn't count it. It was really convoluted. I ended up changing it to it was that Dominic Ford who suggested the other way of doing it.
Yeah, so what's wrong with what you came up with? Like, why wouldn't that be good?
If there's a parentheses on the left, it wouldn't work, is why I decided not to do it.
Mhm,
I
okay, and
changed
then
it.
also like, what if we were looking for, because you were mentioning like 4 or 5 or whatever, like we may not be looking, like we want to write a program that can accept any word to look for, most likely, right? Not just code. So I don't know if you were talking about that specific example, but
I'd have to use like word.length and then
Yes.
word.length plus 1. I figured that out too at some point, and then this is all about what we've been talking, but I changed it to replace most recently.
yeah. Yeah, but I do think if you said like, what is the last character in this, and is that punctuation or not, then and then like, or like, what is the last character if it's, yeah, I mean, there is an algorithm that would work there. Like there's more than one approach to it. And so you could say like, do these equal yes or no? If they don't, check and see if the last character is punctuation. And if it is, then like compare the first whatever characters to it and see if that matches. And if so, then we're good. Yeah. So I mean, I think that could work. I mean, you also would consider like, what if there's ellipses or something? Like, do we count that? Like if they have 2 question marks or 3 question marks or 4 question marks, which, you know, a lot of people write that way, like, do we want to count it? This is where you start getting into not necessarily the algorithm, but like, what do we want? Like, do we want to match? Like, what is just the desire of our program? I could see a case where like, you know, if you were reading tweets and you were trying to figure out how often people say a particular word, that you would want to count, you know, exclamation mark, hashtag, question mark, you know, like, because they're just like emphasizing that word. So yeah, we have to think through, when you're writing an algorithm, you have to think through like all the different possible inputs that you might have to that algorithm to make sure that it's really gonna handle like all these different edge cases that maybe you didn't think of, right? And so another solution might be like, well, does it just contain that word? Like, because there is a contains method. So we could say, you know, does the word contain code? But like, that's another thing. Like, do we want to count coder? Because like in the original spec that we described, like we didn't want to count coder, but coder contains code. And so we may count coder when we don't want to, because that's it's sort of a different word, right? Or like, and like, there might be words that contain another word that are completely different words that we wouldn't ever want to count. And so there's a lot to consider here of like how this should work. So I think my approach, after thinking about it for a bit as well, but now I'm kind of thinking differently, to be honest, after I thought of the like 3 question marks thing. Actually, no, that would work. So we could say there is a replace all. So if we look at our prototype methods here, there's replace, which will, we can say, hey, in this example, they've got this P variable for paragraph. They have the quick brown fox paragraph in here, and they're saying, hey, replace dog with monkey. So that, that will replace dog with monkey, but only one time. So notice that it replaced it here, but not here, because dog is in the sentence more than once. There's a replace all that will replace every instance of it. So you see they use the same example here, and dog gets replaced with monkey everywhere. So we could say, hey, we want to replace question marks everywhere in it, even if they're in there multiple times, with essentially just the empty string is what we could use. So instead of, like, we don't want to use a space in there, like we can just give it an empty string and that will act as just removing it, basically. So that could work. Now replace all, if we just put a string in here, like we need to replace all punctuation. We need to replace question mark, period, probably comma, exclamation mark. Like we need to replace all that stuff. I don't know if we want to do parentheses or not, but I would think so. If you put something in a parenthesis, you'd want to remove that too. So no, we need to replace all of them. So we would actually, to do this well, we would actually need Java, or to know what a regex does, but that's so complicated, I don't want to get into that. So okay, so we're going to update this. We're going to do const punctuation removed word equals word dot replace all. What is this? Okay, replace all, and let's just do question mark, because that I think is that what's throwing us in our example?
Yeah.
So we'll just start with the question mark, and then we'll just replace it with the empty string, which will remove it. It's punctuation removed word. So we just need to change this one here to that. And let's run our program again and see. Oh, I got rid of the console log that was a part of the actual that was the actual part of the program. So we would do also, if it only shows up once, you want to only do time. And if it's more than once, then you want times. So here's an example of where you'll see this happen in like real projects. You'll see like somebody messing up that punctuation, and it's purely like a lazy thing. So you should be like, I maybe don't trust the software as much. They didn't have time to write a simple like if statement for whether to put the punctuation or not. But that's another thing that you could think there was, like, how would you implement checking to see what the word count is and then making your sentence be plural or not? But this one isn't at the moment. All right, so let's run the program. Okay, so now we're getting code shows up 2 times correctly. But, it wouldn't work if we changed it to have a different punctuation. And so we can either chain this, like you can just keep calling this method. You haven't seen this, but you can chain methods that return. Like just like keep calling a method on it, instead of like assigning it to a variable and then calling it on that variable. But yeah, we can just kind of keep doing this. This is sort of the brute force way. There is a way to like say remove question mark or period or parenthesis, but that would involve a regex. Then I don't want to worry about that right now. But yeah, we can just kind of keep chaining this. And get what we want. So there's probably a few more we'd want to do. And like whenever you're chaining methods like this, typically your formatter will move them to new lines just to make it easier to read. But this, okay, so this is pretty decent. We can run this and we still see it's showing up twice. And then if we wanted to change this to, you know, an exclamation point, which actually I didn't do exclamation point, did I? Yeah, if we wanted to change this to a period and run the program again, it should stay. So we still have it showing up 2 times. So we did a good job with that. Okay, and now just for fun, let's see what ChatGPT generates. Oh, I turned it off. It just copied the code I already wrote. Dang it. Okay, let me hide this somehow. Things kind of finicky. Oh, okay. So this one, all right. So this is what ChatGPT wanted to do. So this is using replace, which is what we used. But then it is doing this regex. This is what's called a regex. And you can see it's basically like adding a ton of different punctuation. Like it's removing semicolons, it's removing ampersand and star and brackets and parentheses. And so it's just like doing a much more, it's doing a more complete list of punctuation and then replacing it with an empty string. It's doing that same thing on the match word. So if we had, for some reason, put code question mark in our match, it's also removing it from there as well, and then comparing them.
Sorry, really quick. Was that G just a regex thing that was supposed to be at the end of that?
Yeah, that's a regex.
Okay.
And that means globally match it like anywhere.
Gotcha.
And that, yeah. Okay, sorry, we ran out of time. I got a little nerded out on that, but I was planning on walking through like an algorithm for Celsius to Fahrenheit and then reversing a string. But this is in your free code camp, both these algorithms, so you can go ahead and attempt them on your own the first time without having seen me do it at this now. So all right, so reminder, virtual class on Saturday. And yeah, have a good rest of your week.
Right back at you.
Thanks.
See you all.
Thank you.
See ya.